If you cure me, I will marry you." The millionaire mocked the poor maid, but her touch made the impossible happen. The grand atrium of the Wellington estate was flooded with morning light, streaming through tall glass panels framed by ivory columns. The distant song of birds drifted in from the courtyard, but inside the air carried an almost crushing tension. Edward Wellington, age 62, sat in his wheelchair as he had for the past 6 years. His once athletic frame was now rigid, paralyzed from the waist down after a devastating plane crash that fractured his spine and spirit. His face, lined with years of frustration, bore the permanent trace of bitterness. Every nurse had quit. Every therapist had given up. Now even the household staff moved on eggshells around him. The only one still brave enough to wheel him outside each morning was Naomi, a 29-year-old black maid from the edge of town. Her uniform was always spotless, her apron starched white, though her hands were cracked from endless scrubbing and polishing. That morning, as Naomi knelt beside him to test the water in his therapy basin, Edward let out a cruel chuckle. "You know," he sneered, voice heavy with sarcasm, "if you could cure me, I'd marry you." Naomi froze, her hand still in the water. Her eyes burned, but she kept her head bowed. "What? Nothing to say?" Edward pressed, smirking. "Do you actually believe you have some magic in those little hands?" For the first time, Naomi lifted her gaze to meet his directly. Her voice was soft, but steady. "I believe in mercy, and in things you will never understand." Edward raised a skeptical brow. "Is that so?" Naomi stood, drying her hands on her apron. "You laugh, Mr. Wellington, but I've prayed for you every day these last 2 years, even when you cursed me. Even when you threw things at me, I've asked God to let you feel your legs again, because I wouldn't wish your pain on anyone." Edward's expression faltered. His lips parted slightly. "You prayed? For me?" "It wasn't pity," she said firmly. "It was love." His laughter came then, harsh and almost cruel. "Love? From a maid?" Naomi's face tightened. She said nothing more. Instead, she knelt again, placed her trembling hands gently on his legs, and closed her eyes. Edward's smirk faded. Her touch was feather-light, but then something happened. A tingling shot through his toes. He gasped. A jolt surged up his shin. His breath caught as his right foot twitched, the first movement in 6 years. "Naomi, did you see that?" he shouted, clutching the arms of his chair. "My foot! Move again!" Tears rolled down her cheeks. She nodded but stayed silent, her lips moving in prayer. The movement faded, leaving silence in its wake. Edward leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief. What did you just do to me?" "I don't know," she whispered, terrified. "I just wanted you to feel something." That night, Edward didn't sleep. He didn't call for doctors. He just stared at his legs, waiting for them to twitch again. The next morning, Naomi arrived for her shift, keeping her distance, avoiding his gaze. But Edward's voice broke the silence. "Come here." She froze. "I said come here, Naomi." Reluctantly, she stepped closer. "Touch them again," he said quietly. "And no, this time I'm not mocking you." With hesitation, she knelt and placed her hands on his legs once more. For a long moment, nothing. Then suddenly, his right foot jerked, then the left. Naomi gasped. Edward shouted, "I felt that! I felt it!" A nurse rushed in at his shouting, and chaos followed. Doctors, scans, endless tests. Yet every time the same name left his lips. Naomi. "She must have done something," one nurse whispered. Naomi shook her head. "I didn't. I just believed something for him that he never could. By the third day, Edward was standing with help. By the end of the week, gripping parallel bars, he took 3 trembling steps. Naomi was there for every one of them. One morning, after his 6th step, Edward collapsed onto a garden bench beside her, sweat pouring down his face. "Do you remember what I said before all this?" he asked, her brow furrowed. "That if you cured me, I'd marry you?" Naomi swallowed. "You were joking." "No," Edward said quietly. "I was cruel, but I meant it." She blinked in shock as he continued, "I don't expect you to say yes. God knows I've spent years poisoning this house with bitterness. But you gave me back my legs, my life, and not for a promise. You did it because you cared when no one else would." Naomi's eyes shimmered. "I didn't do it for marriage," she whispered. "I know," Edward said softly. "That's why I'm asking now. Marry me, not because you cured me, but because of who you are, because I've seen more strength in your silence than in every man I've ever done business with, and because the only time I've felt alive since the accident was when you touched me and refused to flinch at the man I'd become." Naomi's lips trembled. At last she placed her hand gently over his. "I prayed for your healing," she said. "I didn't realize I was healing too." Weeks later, the estate threw a grand celebration. But it wasn't just for Edward Wellington's recovery. It was for the quiet maid who had changed everything. Naomi did not wear her uniform that day. She wore a deep blue dress. No apron, no mop, just a radiant smile. And when Edward stood before the gathered crowd, without a wheelchair for the first time, he didn't give a speech. He simply reached for Naomi's hand, and she took it. Not because she cured him, but because she had seen him when no one else dared.